It seemed that Mrs. Lark was growing the largest one. It was bigger than Eloise the pig, yet smaller than Thelma the cow. Mrs. Lark started sleeping in her garden at night so that nobody could steal her amazing watermelon. Joe Morgan's watermelon was pretty impressive, too. He stood guard all day with Thelma. Things weren't good. You could tell everything had changed when, one day, Mrs. Phillips's goat got his horn stuck in the park bench, and nobody, not even Mrs. Phillips, was there to help. By harvest time, things were even worse. Everyone was fighting over who had the best watermelon. The king was coming the next day, and they all worked late into the afternoon preparing. The streets were crowded, but no one was saying a word. Then, just as the sun was going down, Mrs. Lark came running into the town screaming, "It's Eloise! She's fallen off the cliff! My poor little pig is stuck on a ledge! Please, can't somebody help?" "Well, maybe you shouldn't walk your pig by a cliff, lady." Well, in a moment, the whole town went running toward the cliff. Everyone knew and loved Eloise and would do anything to save that little pig. That looks like an OSHA violation. It was a tremendous effort. They brought rope and shovels and hammers and wrenches. Of course, all they needed was the rope. So they put the other stuff down and lowered Joe Morgan along the side of the cliff toward Eloise. It was scary and great at the same time. When it was over, about 20 minutes later, Eloise and Joe were safe. Mrs. Lark, her eyes filled with emotion, stood up and said, "Thank you all so much. And, um, nothing against Milford, the watermelon king, but I personally think this whole contest is, well, silly. In fact, I'm going to go home and eat mine before he even sees it. Would anyone care to join me?" Everyone was quiet for a moment. Then one of the Ferguson kids yelled, "Picnic in the town square!" 5 minutes later, everybody gathered at the square with breads and cheeses and drinks and shovels. Once again, they didn't need the shovels, but someone kept bringing them anyway. Oh, and they brought watermelons, the most beautiful watermelons that anyone had ever seen. They danced and ate all night long. When it was over, the only watermelons that were left were a few rotten-looking ones. The next morning, as expected, the king showed up. He looked at the watermelons that were left. He wasn't very impressed. As he boarded his ship, he said, "I'm afraid these are the most disappointing watermelons I've seen yet. They are, quite frankly, disgraceful. I believe you all need to work on your gardening skills." And as his ship pulled away, the villagers of Chestnut Cove looked rather sad. But they weren't sad at all. They were just tired from staying up all night. That kind of sounds like a cause and effect relationship. Some questions to think critically if you would like. I know at the end of this story, I would think about the genre. I would think about why the villagers decided to even grow the watermelons, what their biggest problem of the story was, and what kind of brought them together again at the end. Hint, hint. Thanks, guys, for listening.